What's going on, Packers Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Packers Latest. I am your host, Taylor Bretl, and I got you up to date on the latest news on the Green and Gold Green Bay Packers. A happy Wednesday to all of you watching or listening out there, whether you're live right now face-to-face on the stream, or maybe you're catching this later in the day. These episodes are always on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Been seeing the listeners on those platforms as well, so I appreciate you tuning in no matter where it's from and when it is in the day. Today on this episode on Wednesday, we're going to be looking at two new players that the Packers claimed, both coming from the AFC, to join Green Bay. These look like they will be depth options, but still nice to see Green Bay continues to stack up in positions of need. One of them a defensive back and one of them a tight end. So let's jump into this. I want to look at the defensive back first in MJ Devonshire. The official release for both players was on X per Tom Pelissero, saying the Packers claimed defensive back MJ Devonshire off waivers from Buffalo and tight end Lachey off waivers from Houston. But looking at Devonshire first, the defensive back was drafted in 2024 by the Las Vegas Raiders. He was a 7th round pick despite his NFL Combine page projecting him to go in the 5th. We want to look at Devonshire in college. He played for both Kentucky and Pittsburgh, and a pretty sizable college career with a red shirt in there. So in 2019, he did red shirt. He played in 3 games at Kentucky. And then in 2020 with Kentucky, he then played in 9 games as a reserve. He was able to collect a tackle and a pass breakup. In 2021, he started to see his playing time go up even more, playing in 13 games as a reserve where he had 18 tackles, one of them for loss, an interception, and 4 pass breakups. That was his last year at the University of Kentucky before he moved on to Pittsburgh. In 2022, with the Pittsburgh Panthers, he was second-team All-ACC return specialist and honorable mention at cornerback. So really interesting to note there. He's very strong in the return game, even though he is a corner. He was tied for 3rd in the FBS with 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns. He played in all 13 games that season, with 9 of them being starts, where he collected 34 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 8 pass breakups. And in the return unit, and the punt return unit, rather, I should say, he had 24 returns for 233 yards, so that's averaging 9.7 yards per return, and he also took one of those to the house. He actually was the first Pitt player to score a punt return and an interception for a touchdown in the same game since Darrelle Revis in 2006, so that is some pretty elite company. And then his last year in 2023 with Pittsburgh, he was second-team All-ACC cornerback. He led the Panthers with 4 interceptions. One of those he returned for a touchdown that year, and he also had 10 pass breakups, playing in 12 games with 9 of them being starts. So a pretty solid college career, a nice change over to the University of Pittsburgh where he really seemed to shine. He actually is from Pittsburgh himself as well, so, or at least Pennsylvania himself as well, my apologies. So it's neat that he was able to go back in his home state, play for the University of Pittsburgh, and have a pretty strong showing in his last 2 years in college. So we look at his size. He stands at 5'10" and 3/4 of an inch, and he's 186 pounds. His arms 32 and 7/8 inches, and his hands pretty small, just 8 and 3/4 inches. So that is his build, kind of similar to what we've seen some of these corners for the Packers be. We kind of talk about the undersize in the corners that the Packers may have, but they are adding lots and lots of depth, and Devonshire is looking to join the mix. So this is per Rob Demovsky on X. Something to note about MJ Devonshire. It says Devonshire has not played in an NFL regular season game, but has been on off-season and or practice squad rosters for the Raiders, Panthers, Ravens, and Bills. So 4 teams that he has been on the practice squad for since 2024 when he got drafted. So he's moving around a lot. The Packers are now the 5th team on the list. He's hoping to find a home comfortably there because he's been moving a lot. I want to take a look at his overview. This was on his NFL Combine page, so this overview was written kind of as of 2 years ago with him getting drafted in 2024, but still pretty important to note. So it says, Devonshire is a cornerback with long arms and impressive ball production. He's confident in press, allowing his athleticism to trace routes, while instincts and agility key in his work from zone. He locates the quarterback in ball flight fairly quickly with his back to the ball. He sits in the pocket of an average route runner and uses his length and reactiveness to quickly swat throws away. The long speed appears to be average, and he picks up his share of flags with excessive grabbing against big targets downfield. A move to a nickel is possible, as he has the athletic traits to make it work, provided in his run support efforts, but don't short-circuit his opportunity. So definitely some issues in the penalty department. But again, I know the Packers are adding him. He's listed as a cornerback, but will be interesting to see if the Packers try him out in special teams because he actually was pretty solid as a returner at the University of Pittsburgh. So feel free to leave in the comments down below. What are your thoughts based on what I've shared with you about MJ Devonshire? Do you think that he has a chance? Maybe he will fit in the corner room, or the Packers just try to have him as a special teams option? Nonetheless, would be neat if he could make the roster for the Packers, get in your first NFL game, because he's been on 4 teams, but just some practice squads and such. He hasn't really gotten actually any time in a true NFL game, but there's always an opportunity with the Green Bay Packers and this coaching staff. So that's going to take us into the next player. We are going to look at Luke Lachey from Houston. He was with the Houston Texans. He was also drafted in the 7th round. So we're going to take a look at him, starting off with his college career. In 2020, he redshirted. He played just 1 game as a reserve, and he did not collect any statistics. And all these years in college were at the University of Iowa. So in 2021, he played in all 13 games, with 3 of those being starts. He had 8 catches for 133 yards. That averages out to 16.6 yards per reception. Pretty high right there for a tight end. Then in 2022, he really boosted up, playing in all 13 games, with 7 of them being starts. He had 28 catches for 398 yards, and that's 14.2 yards per reception. And he had 4 touchdowns that season. He actually only had 4 touchdowns all of college, and they all came in that 2022 season. Then in 2023, he started the first 3 games of the season where he had 10 catches for 131 yards. But they missed the rest of the season because he obtained a right ankle injury. But he stayed in college. In 2024, he played in 12 games, with 11 of them being starts. 28 catches, only 231 yards. That dips down to 8.3 yards per reception. You look at Lachey's build. He stands at 6'5" and 3/4 inches. He weighs 251 pounds. Arms are 32 1/8 inch, and his hands 10 inches, the exact same hand size as Tucker Kraft. So we're going to take a look at his overview as well. That was on his NFL draft page. It says, combination tight end capable of lining up in line or as a move tight end. While Lachey can do both, he lacks the core strength and consistency of a typical Y tight end and has average quickness to escape man coverage on to the next level. He has experience operating underneath as an immediate target, using proper leverage in his routes with a good body control, along with strong hands when contested. He has NFL size, but needs to prove he can be more consistent to sustain as a run blocker in order to become a trustworthy 3-down player in the league. And then it wraps up here saying, unless that happens, he's likely to be fighting for a role as a tight end 3 or tight end 4. So Luke Lachey getting added into a tight end room. Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave are the main 1 and 2. Maybe Lachey can compete for a tight end 3. I know we kind of had thoughts with the Packers draft a tight end. They did not. They only went with 1 offensive player and an offensive lineman. So maybe he could be competing for a tight end 3 spot. Who knows how much he'll actually really be there on the receiving end. Seems like he could just be possibly a name to be a blocker, especially in the run department. But hey, he's a tight end from the University of Iowa, and that is tight end university. So he might have some traits that the Packers may be able to dig out with that coaching staff. But again, feel free to leave in the comments below. Do you like the move? Luke Lachey coming to Green Bay. I guess that kind of rhymes a little bit too, but I don't mind it too much. I mean, these are guys that you're claiming to just see if they can have a fit. Going to see what he's going to be able to do in camp, but Devonshire will be interested to see how much he competes in the corner room, or if he's going to try to be more there on special teams in the return unit, and Lachey maybe just in there a little bit more to block. But I'm going to leave that to you guys. What are your thoughts on the claims? Personally, I don't mind them. It's really hard to weigh sometimes, especially you have Devonshire drafted in 2024 and hasn't played a single game in the NFL, and then you have Lachey as well. He was with the Houston Texans for just a year because he got drafted in 2025, so really no action there as well. It's kind of question marks for these guys. That's why I want to provide you with as much information as I can on the 2 players. But personally, Devonshire, I'd actually be interested to see the special teams aspect. I know the Packers added some depth there, especially in the return unit. It'd be nice to have Jaden Reed back. Also making that acquisition of Sky Moore from the San Francisco 49ers, hoping that he is the guy in the kick and punt return unit. But crazier things have happened. You never know. And then Lachey, maybe if he could be a run blocker, not really sure. He's there to catch many passes, even though he did a decent amount of that in college, especially in that second to last season. But I think that these 2 moves are necessary. It's just to add some depth in positions that might be lacking it, especially that cornerback room. It feels like this is a position the Packers already had a couple names. Then they signed St. Juice. Then they drafted Cisse and Jackson, and now they are claiming Devonshire off of waivers. So lots of names in there and lots of different directions coming to the Green Bay Packers. But that's all I got for this episode of Packers Latest. I will have the next upcoming episode. We're going to be talking about the schedule release because that is just around the corner. corner. It's an exciting time of the year. The Packers' schedule is already built out in their opponents, but we are looking to see who they play week 1 and throughout the rest of the season. There'll be lots to talk about that in a very important upcoming season for the Green Bay Packers in an NFC North division that is going to be very, very competitive. But I appreciate you tuning in to another episode as always, and go Pack Go.